very much. Welcome back. Thank you for coming back for this second panel in the series this afternoon. I'm Matthew Saville. I am the director of the Military Sciences Research Team at RUSI in London, who are providing many of the chairs today. And this is part of our ongoing relationship with École de Guerre here in France. Obviously, this is the discussion on how to grow fast enough to arm the future, as it's called, building European defence capabilities at scale. I think, or at least I would hope, that everyone would recognise that the importance of this subject is clear to everybody. I think if the Russian attack on Ukraine has reminded us of anything, it is the obvious point that war is expensive and requires vast industrial output. And then events since the US election have also provided a, frankly, pretty pointed illustration of the importance of securing your own supply base. And so the past month alone, we have seen a great many statements from European leaders on the importance of increased and sustained investment into European defence. And yet, it is hard not to feel a sense of perhaps cynicism and déjà vu. And frankly, many of us who've been either involved in this, I spent 20 years in the MOD in the UK, or looking at this, have heard much of this before. We are, after all, 10 years on from the point at which European countries actually began increasing their defence spending. And yet Europe still finds itself struggling to both supply Ukraine and rearm itself. So we should ask, how can we achieve an acceleration in that work, and what measures are necessary beyond just more money in order to improve conventional deterrence in Europe? Now, luckily, we are joined today by a panel of experts who can cover both the governmental, the institutional perspectives, and that of industry. So we have Joachim Zucker, who has been director of the Organisation for Joint Armament Cooperation since 2023. That's the European Intergovernmental Organisation for Armament Programmes. He previously served as head of Subdivision Equipment 4 within the German Federal Ministry of Defence. Stacey Cummings has been the General Manager of the NATO Support and Procurement Agency since 2021, and she previously served in the Senior Executive Service in the Office of the Secretary of Defence over in the US Department of Defence. And then finally, Nicolas Chamoussi is the CEO of KNDS France, it's formerly Nexter. He spent over 20 years at Airbus and previously worked in the French Ministries for the Armed Forces and Finance, and was elected president of GICAT, the French Defence and Security Trade Association, in 2024. They'll each speak for a short period of time. We'll then do the usual bit of backwards and forwards, and then we will come to you for questions, hopefully with time. Please do wait for what will hopefully be the roving microphone. I will not hold you up anymore. Joachim, on to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. I'm not an analyst. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a member of a think tank. I'm just a guy with a long background in international and national armaments procurement programs, and before that in the German Air Force as a technical officer. And I represent now here the OCCA, the organization OCCA, which is an organization founded more than 20 years ago. We are managing right now 24 programs for 13 participating states in Europe. We have an operational budget per year of 6.5 billion euros, and the number of programs is increasing very fast, and that is probably one of the topics we will talk about in the next 50 minutes. We have heard now the announcement from the German government, where they are thinking about a special budget for defense of 400 billion euros. The European Commission had made an announcement with 700 billion euros, which is great news. Unfortunately, if I talk politics, and I'm not a politician, then the problem is solved. And it's not solved at all, because now the work starts, because there have been outside people and organizations who take the money, negotiate requirements, negotiate contracts, find industry, and we all know that we have quite limited resources in Europe. But let me just make some statements about the main topic of this panel here. I've been in international programs for 15 years almost, on the German side, on the ministerial side, but also with my colleagues in the other countries. And I'm sure that the defense, the cooperation between governments and defense industry has historically been a cornerstone of our collective security. And we have seen several multinational programs over the last decades, especially in the air domain. We manage A400M, we manage Tiger program in OCCA, and we have a lot of land programs and also Navy programs, so I'm quite sure that that is the case. We also have seen newer initiatives such as the European Defence Fund and the Permanent Structured Cooperation, the PESCO, which have laid groundwork for collaborative projects that enhance our defence capabilities while fostering economic growth. What we see in OCCA is that we get more and more projects coming in with the co-financing of the European Commission. We now get a support in all over the programs by 600 million euros, and I'm quite sure that number will increase in the future too. To strengthen that dialogue further, we must ensure transparency, mutual trust, and a shared vision for the future. That's quite important from my side. On the other hand, the experience shows that the truth is that the most successful cooperation in defense procurement programs are initiated by, I would say, some kind of a limited number of nations. In my opinion, it is crucial that we have platforms, for example, like OCCA, and I guess I'm quite sure Stacey will continue to do that, say that also for her organization, to offer cooperation in different compositions. Whoever has a demand, either among European Union member states or with our partners. We don't only have participating states from Europe, we also have, and we have heard that in the panel before, we have Japan as observer in the Eurotron program, we have India becoming observer in the Eurotron program, we have Australia being participating states and observer. We have Brazil as an observer in one of our programs. So we see Europe is becoming more and more attractive also for nations outside of Europe. In the face, if we talk about competitiveness against US and China, what we need for rapid rearmament needs is a European industrial consortium must leverage their unique strengths to remain competitive against the US and China. And this involves investing in cutting-edge research and development, fostering innovation, and streamlining procurement processes. What we do not see an economy of scale in European defense market. Due to market fragmentation and also limited governmental budgets, the defense production in Europe is more like a manufactory. In my opinion, the key factor to competitiveness is to pool demand for a longer period, to have a business case for the suppliers to implement more automation in the production. I was in the German MOD when the war started 3 years ago, and there was a approach to the industry. Now we have to stay together, and now we have to work. And industry was prepared, and contracts follow very slowly. And of course, the industry must have some kind of a basis, financial basis, and security to make investments on behalf of the nations. By creating a more integrated and efficient defense market, we can reduce redundancies and enhance our collective bargaining power. Additionally, strategic partnerships with non-European allies can provide access to new technologies and markets, further bolstering our competitive edge. We have heard that before. If we talk about balancing off-the-shelf purchases and industrial base preservation, I think that finding the right balance between off-the-shelf purchases and preserving the European defense industrial base is very crucial. While off-the-shelf solution offers immediate capabilities, they can undermine the long-term sustainability of our defense industry. So I think a hybrid approach combining strategic alliances for rapid procurement with sustained investment in domestic production can ensure that we meet immediate needs without compromising our industrial base. This approach requires careful planning and coordination to align short-term gains with long-term strategic goals. We also will talk about expanding defense industrial capacity, and I would say the expansion of the defense industry in the face of limited production capacity is a complex challenge. We experience that every day in managing our programs. To address these, we must focus on enhancing existing production capabilities through advanced manufacturing techniques, automation, and increased investment in workforce training. Furthermore, fostering a culture of innovation and agility within our defense industry can help us adapt in changing demands and technological advancements. Collaborative effort with academic institutions and private sectors and partners can also play a pivotal role. In my opinion, the key factors are orders of high volume for a long period and to renounce the analytical calculation for industrial juste retour among participation nations on a program-by-program basis, which is done in OCCAR. We have the global balance approach. And this approach is one of our DNAs. In conclusion, the intersection of economic interest and defense spending and necessities a delicate balance between stakeholders and shareholders' values. Thank you.
Thank you, and I also want to share my thanks for inviting me to speak on this panel. My name's Stacey Cummings. I'm the General Manager of the NATO Support and Procurement Agency. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are NATO's lead agency for multinational acquisition, sustainment, and support. And we execute this responsibility through 41 support partnerships. Last year, we put on a contract value of 7.6 billion, and the year before 10.6 billion. So we have grown in the breadth of the capability that we provide and also in the amount of capability that we are providing to NATO allies and partners. The panel before us and the speaker before us did a fantastic job of setting the global security landscape that has changed rapidly in the last couple of months. But I think it has reinforced the importance of a strong and self-reliant Europe within the NATO enterprise from a defense perspective. As this security environment is evolving, I think I can see, and we're hearing very strongly, European nations rightfully seeking greater resilience in their defense industrial base and in procurement strategies. We at NSPA are looking for ways how we can support that renewed focus and that desire for a strong defense industrial base. We've heard from Mario Draghi. He put out a report and has called for the acceleration of Europe's ability to act independently where needed. And of course, just last week, major announcements from the European Commission around boosting European defense production and enhanced spending in defense. So this brings us to the immediate question of how can we build European defense capabilities at scale and at the speed that meets today's security challenges, and that's the reason we're here on this panel today. So I think there are three particular challenges that I would highlight. First is production capacity. As was already mentioned, the war in Ukraine has really highlighted the struggles with scaling up production of critical munitions and critical equipment. Despite increased defense spending and announcements of increased defense spending, industry needs long-term contracts in order to make the cost-benefit analysis, to make those investments in supply chains and investments in production, especially those parts of the supply chain that have very long lead items. We also have fragmentation in our procurement decision-making. So I can see joint procurement initiatives have really increased in recent years, but defense acquisition does largely remain national, which leads to inefficiency and duplication. And then finally, interoperability and sustainment. So as Europe is investing in new capabilities, looking for systems that are still interoperable or interchangeable or common within the NATO enterprise to support NATO operations, operational plans. And we talked a little bit in the earlier panel about the NATO defense planning process. This enables the capabilities to fit into the alliance's broader force structure, but also providing that autonomy that nations are looking for. So this is where institutions like NSPA and like OCCAR can play a really important role. Being able to pool resources, so aggregating demand, thinking about the large quantity production runs where we can get the best possible price. What happens when we get the best possible price? It frees up resources to buy other things. So we maximize our output for the minimum input. Supporting logistics and sustainment. We can't think of a procurement of a weapon system as ending when we deliver it to users, to the warfighter. It needs to be maintained and sustained. And that acquisition life cycle and that full life cycle support also has a benefit when nations work together and share the supply chain, the costs of the supply chain, and investments in that supply chain. And then, of course, new initiatives in investing specifically in the European defense industry with some of the challenges that our defense industry partners have with getting capital, or if they don't have long-term contracts, again, that cost-benefit analysis for making investments. So what's NATO been doing? At the summit in Washington last year, allied heads of states and government have already endorsed some bold measures, including the NATO Industrial Capacity Expansion Pledge, also called the NICE Pledge, which is a commitment by all NATO nations to accelerate defense production, streamline procurement, and enhance supply chain resilience. Here at my agency, at NSPA, we have established structures to be able to help the alliance do just that. One example that I do like to talk about, that we awarded a contract at the end of 2023. It's the largest contract that NSPA has ever awarded. And here is an example of where we can bring together the strengths of both sides of the Atlantic as part of the NATO enterprise. So we awarded over a 5 billion euro contract to Comlog, which is a joint venture between MBDA in Germany and Raytheon in the United States. And what it did is it took an existing technology, the Patriot GEM-T missile, and it created a partnership in order to move production capacity. And I shouldn't say move, create a second redundant capacity in Europe with a European workforce in a joint venture to be able to expand production capacity, but expand it in Europe so that there wasn't competition for the production line in the United States, and again, creating that technological sharing. I feel like I might have gone over my 5 minutes, so I'll stop so we can leave room for questions. But again, thank you so much for inviting me to be here, and I'm sure that we both look forward to telling you how great our agencies are in supporting nations in the alliance.
Yeah, thank you. Trust on me to say happy we are with the two agencies sitting on my left side. So I'm kind of in a schizophrenic situation where I'll talk on behalf of GCAT, as you rightly said. GCAT is the Trade Association for Defense and Security in France. Almost 500 members, one of them being KNDS France, which I'm the general manager of. But I will try to talk on behalf of French industry and not that much on behalf of the company I'm the managing director of. Joachim and Stacy, I wrote down industry must have security basis to have an investment. Security to have an investment basis. We are ready to place high orders of volume. Stacy, you said 7.6 billion euro order intake last year, or order placed, long-term contracts. I think this is music to our ears. I mean, and I will stop short my pitch now. I mean, you said it all. What we need is visibility to plan investment to support the defense bases in Europe. This being said, I will not stop now. I just would like to structure this 5-6 minutes, upcoming minutes in three domains: on the French level, at European level, at international level. So on the French side, for those who are not completely familiar with what happened in the last 3 years, you might remember at the opening ceremony of the Eurosatory 2022, so we were 3 months in war, the French president, relayed by the minister, called for économie de guerre, whatever you call it, war preparedness economy, strong effort on industry, relayed by the minister himself, by the chief of staff, especially the army chief sitting in front of me. And this unfolded in three ways. Reduce lead times, increase throughput, and reduce strategic shortfalls by, in a sense, re-insuring or insuring activities which were subcontracted or procured overseas, or at least outside of Europe. The whole thing being without, of course, compromising in any way security and quality of the systems, ammunition, whatever you say, we are delivering to the forces. So this was done in a very structured way, together between the MODs and industry, because otherwise it would have been useless. We give you one example of what we did on KNDS side. So back my second hat. At this time, I mean, the example is well known, but we were producing 1.52 howitzer, the one we call Caesar, per month. Right now, we are churning out 6, most probably 8 per month, notwithstanding the fact that we are also delivering artillery systems which are not Caesars, but which are also big artillery systems delivered to other countries. So we multiplied in a time span of what, 2.5 years by almost 8 the churning rate of these systems. We did it exactly the same way with ammunition, with artillery ammunition and tank ammunition. And this is what we've been doing. I think this is a very concrete example. I'm speaking under control of my favorite chief of staff in front of me. We have tried to do it the best way. Nothing is perfect, but at least increasing the production rate in this range is something that we did. We are not the only one to have done it, and we'll do it again and even stronger if needed. We'll see in the future. This does not come in a second. I mean, there's a huge, a lot of work behind. I would like to point on 2 issues which both of you refer to. HR, human resources. Everyone is looking for qualified resources right now, not only in the agencies, but also as far as we're concerned on our side. So that's one point, one shortfall. The second one is some raw materials, or let's say semi-finished material, explosive and propellant. And this falls into the third category, reduce lead time, increase throughput, reduce strategic dependencies. These are the type of, let's say, raw materials that we are procuring sometimes outside of Europe, which we are not doing anymore. And I have to pay tribute to the French government, who has decided early enough, or at least as early as possible, to re-source propellant production in France. It was not done anymore since decades. It has been done. Decision end of 2022, beginning of 2023. Factory is ready 1st of January 2025, and it will start to produce hundreds of tons of propellant every year. So I think that's in a few seconds what we've been doing in France, and I think this is of quite an importance. Now, second level is on European level. If we have 2 seconds, I will just list the type of cooperation structures that we are working on, that we've been working on. Joint ventures. As you might know, we have created more than 30 years ago a joint venture with BAE Systems, or BAE, to develop a case telescope ammunition systems, the gun and the ammunition. One type of organization. Second, what we call in France GME, temporary association of companies to do one of the other programs. I'm glad to see that what we have in front of us, the 3 army chiefs, or their representative for France, Belgium, Luxembourg. This Netherlands and Netherlands, but the Luxembourg is somewhere. Is there anyone from Luxembourg represented? Anyways, so maybe Netherlands will join this big program. this CAMO program, partnership program between at least France and Belgium. This is one type of very structuring association. It's not only an industrial cooperation, which it is, by the way, but it's, and you would be the best one to talk about it, it goes far beyond. It goes in terms of alignment of the industrial, in the military organization, military training organization, military maintenance organization. So this is, in my opinion, one of the best example of how to build European defense organization in a structured way. So JV, temporary association of companies, multinational corporations. I see my friend from the German embassy in France. We are on the basis of a very strong political will. We are progressing week after week in the structuring of a bilateral cooperation program in the future main battle tank, famous MGCS. It's not a walk in the park, but at least when there's a will, there's a way. And this is definitely what we are doing. European Commission corporations. We are involved in numerous cooperative programs at the European Commission level. To name one, ASAP, the famous plan which was rolled out by under the lead of Commissioner Breton, something which was done rather quickly, rather efficiently to support development of ammunition and propellant and explosive production in Europe. That's something which was done as a matter of urgency, but it turned out to be quite positive and useful. This is a typical good program that we would like to continue in the future. We do have cooperation with OCCAR, and here at this juncture, just name one of the programs that you maybe I missed it, the VBAE, which is the paragon of Franco-Belgian cooperation, to be further extended. Of good cooperation between OCCAR as the lead of the program, with the support of European Commission European Defence Fund development, where we'll try to benefit from technology maturation done on behalf of the European Commission to feed an OCCAR-led program. I think this is a good, not easy to work with, but at least that's a good combination of strengths here and there. And then, of course, we do have cooperation with NATO through your organization, Stacey. So if you make the menu of everything, that leads to a huge way of organizing our program and making progress at European level. Now, there's it's fair to say that some of the tools that I've been talking about, ASAP, EDIRPA, very useful, but created, put together as a matter of urgency, just to take care of an urgent situation. Now the question is how to make these sustainable over the long time. And I think here, whatever is being done in the White Book of the Commission, in the rolling out of EDIP, maybe one day by European Defence Act, I think this is very important for us. I mean, back to what you said in terms of stability and visibility, to have these long-standing tools that we can trust upon, that we can use, and that we know that we will be using in the long term. This is very important. Not to mention simplification of the norms. We are flooded by norms all over the place, and everything which is called omnibus in these days is very much welcome. And last but not least, the international level, not only on the French level, but European cooperation, but also we do have an industrial structure in France, and I think that's the same in Europe, which cannot develop and survive without a significant chunk of export activities. At KNDS France, we are something like 50-50 balance between national activities and export. At GCAT, so European French Industrial Base, we are below this threshold, and it's very difficult to have a very stable and sustainable industry organization without a minimum and a higher than 30% export part. So here, and I see one of a good friend from the International Directorate of the French Army. It's, again, that's very important, all you high-ranking military people, the support you provide us, the support you provide to industry to expand on the international level is extremely important. That's the third pillar: national, European, international. We need the three of them, and we count on you just to support us.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, all three of you. I think if I were to start then, it sounds like we're making progress across Europe, but there is still quite a long way to go. You've all, in various ways, touched upon the issue of setting the requirement. I can recall when I was still in government, the UK went out quite early, giving lots of, from its own stocks, weapons to Ukraine. Some of them complex weapons, but things like Starstreak and NLAW anti-tank weapons and a range of other things. And it then came to replenish its stockpiles. And then the slightly crazy way that government bureaucracy works came into play, which is that the Defence Secretary said, replenish our stockpiles. Go. Like, this is not hard. We have now our gap. We know what weapons we want. The weapons are still in production. What then followed was a slightly bizarre circular discussion, which was that we would go to industry and say, well, we'd like the following weapons. And they would go, how many do you want? And we would either say a very small amount to replenish it, or we don't know, how many can you make? And at that point, the fact that production capacity was quite limited came into play. And of course, government said, could you produce more? And they went, well, yes, if we built another production line, will you order enough to enable us to build a new production line? And government goes, well, we don't know. How many can you make? And you have a circular argument. So where does the burden of unlocking that problem of governments can't just be open-ended, and they can't say, we want 5 million or whatever. But there is a requirement, and then there is the contingency, particularly if you're thinking about warfare. Who unlocks that most? Because I'm guessing the answer on the industrial side will be like, well, industry can't take risks there. We might spend money on a production line you don't use. So how do governments break through the problem of actually setting that in motion to increase capacity? I don't know if you want to go first.
I can do that. That's a quite difficult question to answer, quite difficult topic. So if we look back, I was involved in NH90 helicopter. I don't know, 5 core nations and in the whole 10 nations, and I guess we had at the very end 15 different configurations. Same helicopter, but different configurations. I'm wondering once in a while why the Dutch Navy, the Navy of Italy and France and the Navy of Germany fly the same missions but have different configurations. That's one problem, I could say. The harmonization of requirements to get the same kind of equipment is extremely difficult. I'm not an operator anymore, so I keep out of that business. But we need to harmonize requirements, try to get the same equipment or almost the same equipment. I know that you have radios and encryption is something like very national, but all the other stuff should be almost the same. We have a Boxer vehicle. Of course, the mission modules are different. But why we do have 3 or 4 different driving modules? Why do we have that? That doesn't make sense on in-service support, on training, on logistics, on documentation. We have to solve that. And then you get bigger numbers, and then you get a much bigger incentives for industry to ramp up their final assembly lines and to invest money also in the long term. What we have done in the past, in the Cold War and later on, basically later on, we had a lot of time and we had no budget. Now we have more budget but no time. So we have to expedite our processes. So to spend 4 or 5 years, you have talked about the common tank, to harmonize requirements, we don't have the time to do that anymore. And we need bigger numbers. And that is they have to fulfill the requirements of their shareholder values. That is basically what they have to do, and they have to earn money. That's their business, and our business is to spend as less as money as possible, and we need to find the right balance. And the right balance is to give them incentives in the duration of the contract on one side, and on the numbers of the equipment we would like to buy.
Thank you. So in my experience, the only clear demand signal to industry is a funded signed contract, an awarded contract that has funds on it. And so the processes that we have put in place from a public sector perspective, which are very necessary for fairness and transparency, make it a little bit difficult for the government to turn to industry and say, how many can you make? Because generally what we do, especially in a competitive environment, is we have rules and regulations and laws for transparency to make sure that we are following the rules that our governments have put into place, or in my case, that our nations have put into place as part of the NATO enterprise. And so as we create what we believe is a demand signal to industry, which is speeches, announcements, discussions about funding, industry has learned, based on our behavior, that they need a funded contract in order to take risk. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in my experience, the area where the defense industry takes risk is different than where a commercial industry would take risk. The commercial industry can take risk producing items, and if they don't sell it to the customer they expect to sell it to, they have all these other customers that they can reach out to. In the defense industry, industry has one customer, and that is the militaries of either the national, the international, multinational, or NATO environment. And so when they only have one customer, the risk that they are willing to take is not to increase production if they don't know that they have a customer at the end of the line. And so you have this dynamic of industry, and I've talked to industry in the last 2 months who have told me that they, at risk, went and increased their production, and they are waiting for orders. So they did what they were asked to do, and they haven't gotten the firm orders. They have orders maybe through the end of this year, but they planned those investments on having orders for the next 5, 7, 8, or 10 years. And so from a public sector, from a government perspective, making sure that we are aggregating demand to the greatest extent possible so that we can create those long-term multinational contracts that give industry that stability, that allows them to both invest and have confidence that they're not making an investment that's going to turn into a loss. But please, feel free to...
Thank you, Stacey. You're absolutely right. I mean, just to make sure one point, yes, we do serve shareholders. That's fine. That's rule of the game. But we primarily serve forces. I mean, what we are here for is to serve the forces while not losing money, let's put it this way. But the primary goal is definitely to serve the customers. Customers is the wrong way. Now, indeed, what we need are signed, funded contracts. There's no question. I mean, that's the name of the game. We do have in France, I think that's a very valuable tool, and I think a lot of countries start to have it or will start to do it, is what we call the loi de programmation militaire, or whatever the English translation is, midterm appropriation bill or something like this, which is spanning over several years and gives, it's not a business case. It's not a signed and funded contract or series of signed and funded contracts. At least it gives a relative visibility on what might happen. The fact is that most of the time, this bill has been followed to the cent. Let's put it this way. Now, one point, and I will come back to your initial question. One point is, yes, we need contract, but let's take an example today in terms of ammunition. If I take the decision today to spend, 50 million to build a new ammunition facility, I will carry the amortization and depreciation of this factory in the next 20 years. That's pure accounting. So each and every year in the next 20 years, I will have to pass a provision to depreciate or to amortize this facility. Irrespective of whether this facility is full booked up with orders or not. So the decision which we should take today is to spend 50, whatever the amount is, and say we take the risk that it will not be fully used full speed until 2045. That's kind of a bet. Hence the idea which have been floated, and I did it again a few days ago in the French press, of why not having the nations or even the Commission, talking as a European, invest in facilities which will be state-owned or Commission-owned. I mean, kind of, maybe it's an old-fashioned story, but at least to have something like a government-owned and corporate-operated facility, especially for ammunition, whereby it will be state-owned or European Commission-owned, operated by a company, and if not used anymore because, for God's sake, we have no war on this continent or no war anymore, then it will be stopped or put into rest or whatever you call it. But it will not have to be financially supported by a corporation. I think that's something that we need to think about twice. The second question is good to have a facility which we can, let's say, ramp up and ramp down like this one, but it needs human resources to staff it. Hence, the second idea is to have what we call industrial reserve. So people trained year after year as civilians or military, trained on our own facilities, and which can be, in case of, called as a reserve to operate these facilities. And then when we do not need them anymore, they are back to their initial job. It's a bit theoretical, but I think it needs to be thought about. It's not for now, because now we do not have time to spend to train people and to build facilities which will be used in 10 years from now. But that's something I think needs to be considered over time, having dormant facilities, train people assigned to their day-to-day work, which we can call upon to raise the production in case of massive requirement, especially for ammunition.
I mean, I've got a million more questions, and I'd love to just keep sort of grilling you, but I suspect actually, given that we've got about 8 minutes left, it's better if I actually go to the audience for now, assuming there are loads. So I will pick out a couple of people. The gentleman quick off the mark there, I think I shall pass back the microphone to you.
Thank you. I'm Nicolas Decaux. I'm a fund manager here in Paris, and I invest in publicly listed equities. And my question is for Mr. Chamoussy. And I guess to break the deadlock, why not raise capital on the capital markets? I think you've seen how hot the market is. Your paper would fly like hotcakes, and you would have the necessary capital to invest in your facilities, and then you can start this cycle and provide equipment and ammunition to the governments later down the road.
You mean listing the company or raising capital with bonds or something like this?
I would recommend listing the company, maybe 20, 25, 30%. You raise capital, you keep control, the government keeps control, but you've got money that you can spend right away and you never have to pay it back. I mean, we'll ask for some money back at some time, but
yeah, and listing the company I'm working for is not listed, and it's beyond my pay grade to decide whether it should be one day or the other. So I will not venture in this type of roads. But now, whatever the funding source comes from, at the end of the day, if we do not have orders to fill in the facilities that we have paid for, I mean, it does not loop correctly. If you are an investor, if you would invest in a facility where I will tell you, yeah, it's up there for the next 20 years, but it's only loaded for the next 22 years, and then the rest will be lost. I mean, provisions that I will have to book because it will not be loaded. would you be as prone to invest? Probably not. I don't know. It's okay. So we'll have a talk later on.
Jyri Naitasala from the Finnish National Defense University. Thank you for excellent panel. We've been hearing about pledges, initiatives, commitments for at least 25 years. European states within NATO promising to do more to kind of make the gap between United States and Europe smaller in military terms, and this hasn't been realized. So the situation is worse now than in 1999 when we had the Defense Capabilities Initiative in Washington and ever since. So how do you see it now? Do you see, looking into what's going on now, are we in Europe actually investing more, not just recovering the equipment sent to Ukraine, but are we going to see in 5 to 10 years' time new divisions and fighter squadrons in Europe?
I am from the procurement and acquisition part of NATO, so I can talk about it from that perspective. So one thing I'm seeing is a renewed effort to bring multinational coalitions together to acquire new capability, whether that new capability is the most advanced weapon system on the market, or to begin rationalizing requirements together in order to design and develop and produce the next generation of weapon systems. I am seeing more of an interest for nations to come together and do that. And what I also see are industry getting together, of course, in my case, across the NATO industry, coming together to respond to those requirements, bringing the best industry and technology from different NATO nations. And then they come together and form a coalition to meet the needs or the requirements that are developed by the military. And for me, more and more of that is how industry becomes more and more competitive. So if you're competing against coalitions of industry partners for the work that we're asking you to do, from we, the military, to you, industry, then not only are the coalitions of industry working together and learning from each other, but they're learning by competing against each other. And so to me, I think that that is a really positive sign.
So just maybe a short thing from my side. OCCA is focusing more on the managing of the big and complex programs with development, also procurement and in-service support. So we are not involved in the government of the shelf or military of the shelf. But what we see now is that the interest of countries to purchase more equipment, especially on the missile sector and air defense sector, is obvious. It's quite obvious. We see a strong demand, and this is the result of the development in the past months, I would say. It should have started maybe several years ago, but it took, this initiative from the other side of the transatlantic to push forward the European countries.
I would just add that in your question is implicit that the benchmark should be, should European be able to produce defence capabilities to the same scale and quality as the US? Well, the US is spending just shy of $900 billion a year, and combined European NATO spending is something like $457 billion a year. So that gap is not closing anytime soon. Therefore, unless we discover something magic, the capability gap is not closing. But that's probably not the requirement. The requirement is, can we overmatch the most likely threat that we face and deter it? And that's probably Russia, although there is a whole heap of then additional questions of what about other potential threats? How do you kind of maintain your advantage, et cetera? And that brings some awkward questions on the policy side for how Europe coordinates. Does it pick winners and losers, both in capability terms, but also industrial terms? And what about wider ambitions? I come from a country that has an ambition to basically be like Little America and have a global expeditionary capability. And we have some rationale for that. And actually, the French have a significant Indo-Pacific presence in military terms. So how do we factor that in? But if you start with the requirement, what is the requirement for the military capability into which you are investing? I think the question for Europe should be, I might be return to this later on, how is it that we're spending £457 billion dollars a year and still not getting that benchmark capability? That's a different question. Who else would like to have a go? I've probably got time for one more.
Good afternoon. Marlo Sonic, master student in war studies at King's College London. So you talked about the importance of raw material in increasing capabilities, and knowing that we are willing to produce even more and more, how to secure these raw materials, knowing how dependent we are on graphite, on aluminium, on nations that are outer EU, and that could present a risk for our rearmament strategy. Thank you.
Best probably not, but the one you mentioned, graphite and steel and aluminum, I'm not that concerned. I mean, we are using far less steel volumes and masses than any other industry, even though we are, as you can imagine, we are not exactly the same type of steels and aluminiums that others are using. But this is not that much my concern. My concern, as I mentioned before, is explosive and propellant, electronic components. I mean, we know how dependent we are from other countries. These are the bottlenecks that we are depending on. But of course, we are not doing it ourselves. Monitoring this is done jointly, hand in hand with the governments, with the nations. Especially in France, we do have very close cooperation with the French procurement agency, DGA, where we do have joint monitoring of raw material availability. What I'm also very nervous about in these days is the stability and the strength of the supply chain. We know that we have a very scattered and diverse supply chain in France, but it's probably the same in other countries. And if one of these suppliers fails, then we end up in a big trouble. So we are double sourcing, multi-sourcing. But first of all, this costs a lot. And second, this is no guarantee at all. So not only the raw materials, but also the financial stability of the supply chain is of the essence.
Thank you. I think that probably brings us to time. We'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll have the final panel, and then closing remarks. The bad news is closing remarks are from me, so there's more to come. The good news is that as we're slightly